it's a product at the end of the day. And when you think about this syndication business as a product,
Hmm.
then really you think about, right, who are your customers here? Who are you trying to tackle and access? And it's on both sides. It's the founders and the investors. And what is your unique value prop or access differentiation, right, that you're bringing to the table?
Colin, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Harry. How are you doing?
I usually encourage people to listen to our podcast, but seeing as you and I both just got fresh haircuts, I'm going to push people over to our YouTube channel today. So if you want to stop what you're doing right now and find us on YouTube, I think that could be a good way to listen to today's interview. Sound good?
Sounds good to me. Although
All
the
right.
background that's fuzzy, I don't know, it's making my head look, a little weird. But
Yeah. And
yeah.
although we didn't give today's guest the memo to get a haircut before the show, he is looking good. He's ready. I'm excited to dig in. Rob Lusk leads business development at Sydecar and is the founder and general partner of Duende Ventures. Prior to joining Sydecar, Rob served as head of partnerships at Assure before focusing on the pipes for venture capital. He spent different chapters producing documentary film, playing football, and serving as a full-time missionary, which is all pretty typical experience, to get into venture, right, Rob? He's based in San Francisco and spends time in Berkeley, where he recently earned an MBA from the Haas School of Business and previously worked on research with the Program for Innovation in Social and Entrepreneurial Finance. He likes to surf, snowboard, and read in his spare time, and we're excited to have him on today. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to chat, and we appreciate all the support we've gotten from Sydecar. So we figured who better to have on from than someone from the company. And you've got a cool kind of personal history, kind of doing some investments in SPVs, which we'll definitely get into. But first, for those, I'd love to get a little bit more info. Can you talk about Sydecar? And we've mentioned it a few times now on the podcast, but maybe start with kind of like why did you join Sydecar? Why were you attracted to the company personally?
Yeah, thanks, Harry. I spent about 10 years thinking about what it means to democratize access to private markets, to venture capital. We've seen since the Jobs Act, I was doing research actually at Berkeley. I think you alluded to it in the bio breakdown. At the time, it was really framed up as crowdfunding.
Hmm.
And there was a lot going on in that space about, this democratization story. How are you going to pool capital? What that's led to years later, I don't think it was quite ready for it in different ways. But it's really now this technological disruption of these traditional financial services industries and these different asset classes and private markets that are now more efficient, that now have more access. Some of these things that I think everyone dreamed about when we were talking about the Jobs Act or when we were talking about crowdfunding several years back.
Yeah.
I found my way to Assure, where some of this stuff was starting to come to fruition, right? The idea of not just regulatory change or platforms, but actually some of the infrastructure that would facilitate this stuff. And so this idea of an SPV in a box, piecemealing some of these services to make it super efficient to actually deploy capital, it started to get closer to the vision. And I had a few years there really getting immersed in this idea of the pipes, the back end,
Yeah.
to facilitate capital deployment. And they made a lot of good headway. I think they almost 10,000 deals,
Hmm.
right? The angel list, Genesis, and some of those things that were really, I think, precursors to where we are now. That being said, there were still some gaps, some things missing. One thing that's always important is getting with the right people,
Hmm.
right? Finding the right team to get on the mission with. But I think also fundamentally there's a vision for how to architect something, how to execute on it. And I think those things go hand in hand. And that's where the Sydecar story comes in, at least for me,
Yeah.
was I was in a unique position, external facing partnerships. I really knew a lot about the competitors that were coming up. I had really good relationships with a lot of the communities that were driving this ecosystem from that side, as far as, being really connected to what were the customers, these emerging managers, these syndicate leads that were doing it. even producing the podcast for sure, actually. So love what
Oh,
you guys
nice.
are doing, putting this stuff out there. And so I got a good purview at that time of, okay, hey, this opportunity is
Mm-hmm.
really exciting. It's coming together, and we're kind of right on the front of the wave, but also picking the horse, right? Where's the team that I want to be with to do this, and how are they thinking about it? And Sydecar, there was I was following them, right? Social media,
Yeah.
whatever, seeing what they were putting out. The focus on product, I think, was the most intriguing thing to me, right? It was all about building from the ground up with discipline, the this this truly product-led approach, which is so hard to do in services when you're trying to
Yeah.
grow and you're trying to disrupt services in a bespoke industry like
Yeah.
venture, right? Where everyone thinks that they're doing it their way, and their way is strategic, right? Their docs are strategic, everything is strategic. And it's like, how do you influence a market to standardization that can enable product? Because product is the way, right? The pipes, that's the way that this thing's gonna play out, the way that at least the people that I was talking to, that, you know, myself included, were really excited about. And so one of they dropped a press release about some funding round,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw, like, right, the cap table, some of the names that were on there, and one of them was uh, a partner of ours, a really good one of the community leaders that was up and coming, and I was really excited about. And I was like, dude, what are you doing? You know, this is the new comp. I talked to him a little bit, and it just checked out, right, with what I was seeing,
Yeah.
his excitement for it. And I'm like, hey, you know, I got a link with with the team. Funny, right? You're coming from like the incumbent, you shoot the message over, and it's like, you know, is this a partnership? What's going on here? But I got the chance to get to know them a little bit more, and so far it's been the best investment decision that I've made, and feel really grateful that I've been able to join forces with the team that's there, and now the team that's come together ever since I joined.
Very cool. Well, I like the way you phrase it as a great investment decision. And I know we talked a little bit offline about your personal experience investing. It sounds like you've done a couple SPVs yourself now, and then invested in a couple. So why don't we start there and talk a little bit about how that came about? What was it like running your first SPV?
Yeah, yeah. Again, when you're talking so much about this, right? How easy it is to do it.
Yeah.
I'm putting that out there, right? Anyone could do it. It's easy. Look how efficient we're making it. I finally just like dipped my finger in and tasted the Kool-Aid a little bit.
Hmm.
The first one, um, and it's funny because they didn't come from the Sidecar network
Hmm.
or my job directly, and I think that was probably important just to keep it clean and manage some of the conflicts. But it was a cousin of mine who is not tied to venture, not San Francisco, right? None of that. He was a scientist who had worked at Schrodinger for like 20 years and was making his first leap into entrepreneurship.
Oh, wow.
He got recruited to a startup, like a
Hmm.
right, not early stage idea stage startup, and he ended up connecting me to the founder, and we started talking about what he was doing, and I was like, hey, let me help you run this SPV,
Yeah.
founder led SPV. And the cool thing, he already got that part of it. This was, I think, his third startup, and so he was coming into it understanding the value prop of
Hmm.
from the founder side, running a friends and family SPV,
Yeah.
pooling all those small checks, and was interested in Sidecar just for that reason. And I threw my name in there and was like, hey, let me run it for you. I won't take economics, right, on anyone that you're bringing in, your crew, but hey, if I can bring some money in too, you know, can you carve out a little for me? And so it was low stakes, right? I was like, hey, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna prove myself out, and whatever I can bring in, I can bring in, right? I didn't have that pressure to come in with a big check or whatever with my SPV.
Yeah.
Ended up getting a friend who just launched his fund, solo GP, this was his first check from his fund, and he actually went through the SPV like with his fund check. So that gave me a big bump on like my dollars in there.
Yeah.
Just turned out to be a great experience, and that got me excited about the potential for me to do this right more and more intentionally going forward, and have done a few more since.
So Rob, you ate the dog food, right, so to speak, as they say in the product world. Tell us a little bit about like you using the product, and what were your cringe moments that you were like, man, I can't believe we didn't do this way? Or
Oh man, that's a good question. I have a lot of them actually. And the product team was, I think, in part like, oh no, like what have we done? Like letting this guy see this side of it. On the other hand, they're super grateful. And I think that's why the team embraces it, right? Like from Nick down, it's uh, this dog food thing, right? With having all of us be that intimately connected to our customers, to the product. I think it's so valuable for a startup. And I started making lists, and I started hitting up. The cool thing for me is I'm in San Francisco, which is pretty much our product team, product and eng team, right? So I'm the only business guy over here, and I'm in their ear now. And they're now hitting me up to get into like early stage discovery specs, walking through right some of the flows with the product team on our new syndicates product that we're rolling out. And for me, it's like, I need this. I'm trying to scale this thing up. I'm thinking about how I'm going to build this business right from where it is now to going forward. And so it's really motivating for me to get it right and to try to think about, how I can leverage this going forward. So it's a really cool setup.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a couple things just as sort of general startup advice. And, I'm no startup expert, but, having worked on a number of initiatives, especially in the rideshare space with companies like Uber and Lyft, like I think the two things that always stand out to me, it's like, yeah, doing the actual product or service, like, okay, being an Uber driver is a lot easier than running an SPV, I would say. But like, I think it was amazing to me. Like, I think Uber for like the first many years of the company, no one actually drove for the company. They started doing it. They're like, oh my God, this is, so enlightening. And I think also like not being scared to look at competitors, like, hey, what are competitors doing, right? Like they might do some stuff better and they might do some worse, right? Like, is there a moat around some aspect of their product, or can we just like, they've spent millions of dollars figuring this out, let's just copy it now? Like some things they might do better. Right. And I also like too, like on the actual strategy of an SPV, one thing you mentioned, it kind of reminded me that I haven't quite done this, but I've offered this to founders when I'm doing SPVs, is kind of what I think of as like a founder SPV. Like, hey, you've got a bunch of friends, maybe family members, like don't worry about like setting up an SPV. Let me do that for you. Right. Like some people getting started with SPVs might not have a network or they might not have big money. But if you meet a founder who just like offer to run a syndicate for them, like I think that would be pretty valuable. It sounds like you might have kind of even touched on that with one of the deals you did.
That if I was going to list off a couple ideas, strategies, tactics, especially getting started, that would be a big one. That's one that I've leveraged. And not only does it reduce the pressure for like what your check size is, how much you can bring in from the SPV, it also will enable you to get allocations that you maybe otherwise wouldn't. You're now providing a service to this founder, right? You're coming in and now you're developing relationships with all their investors. And now, right, you get the chance to get access to people who are already writing angel checks, right? And this founder is not competitive with you. They're not like, hey, don't take my LPs in my syndicate, my fund.
Yeah.
Because that's just not their game. That's not what they're doing, right? They're going and trying to build a business, right? So it's different than like a co-syndication game where you have to be super sensitive about that kind of stuff. They want you to be the face of the SPV. They want you to take that burden off of them so that you can be the one running the Q&As, running the investor updates, doing all those things for them. So I think for me, that was like an entry point that has really worked. And I intend to do that going forward, even right, maybe as I am more established and could execute right sort of standards. Like I just see it as a win-win to throw that. I mean, I'll say like typically this would mean that you're doing early stage deals, right? Even like pre-seed, seed deals. Not necessarily only those, but that's typically where you'll see this come up as being really relevant. But I think it's a great strategy.
interesting. It's funny that I had a very similar experience early on Like two, I think of the 8 SPVs I did last year were kind of in concert with the founder. And like you said, it's like the perfect way to meet other investors, but also kind of de-risk it for yourself because they're bringing in part of it, and then you can go out and do smaller chunk or whatever it may be. So I really like that model personally. And Sidecar's made it super easy to actually like share carry on that too and like do it. I feel like it's a little bit of a little hack behind the scenes to do it, but
Yeah.
I love figuring that out. But yeah,
I kind
overall, I
of
agree. It's yeah.
I like that, Colin. I kind of like to aggressively waive carry on some of these SPVs, right? If someone brings me a deal, I'm like, hey, you can come in with any amount and I'll waive the carry since you brought me the deal, right? Or like you were saying, Rob, like I'll offer to founders, like, hey, if you've got any, I'm going to syndicate this deal anyways. If I invest from my fund, if you've got any small checks or people, friends, family who you wanted to get in, right? Like this is the perfect way, especially in like that $1,000 to $5,000 range early stage, right? Where maybe you don't want them on the cap table, but you would love to have them involved. So I kind of like, the tactical advice, and that was really one of the reasons why I was excited to have you on, Rob. And that kind of leads me to my next topic. I would love to get like some insider knowledge from you about, maybe this, like you're working at Sydecar, obviously. So you're interacting with, I mean, tons of founders and emerging managers, we talked about, the sort of founder SPV as one of the best ways to get in. Like, what's another thing that stands out to you, like that you're hearing from people like, hey, this is a great, kind of unique way to get started with SPVs or be involved with SPVs. Is there anything else that stands out to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple ways to look at this, right? It's a product at the end of the day, and when you think about this syndication business as a product,
Hmm.
then really you think about, right, who are your customers here? Who are you trying to tackle and access? And it's on both sides. It's the founders and the investors. And what is your unique value prop or access differentiation, right, that you're bringing to the table? And I think, right, some people, and this more so applies to the person who's doing this on the side, right, or getting started. The
Hmm.
syndicate lead concept is how are you leveraging your existing setup? Do you have access to founders? Are you an operator that, right, has domain expertise, that is connected to some of the up and coming companies? And on the flip side, like, do you have access to potential investors that are outside of that world? I think a big part of this is being a bridge between, right, two disconnected parties on some level, and really thinking about, okay, who are going to be my ideal investors? How am I different with my ability to reach some of these people that aren't already able to do this themselves or see the same deals or do whatever? Getting in, I think, is easier for these syndicate, or can be, again, if you have that initial relationship or access point, just because of the size of the check that you're writing and sort of the role that you're playing with the overall round. So I think taking all of that and then thinking about, okay, then what is the product that I'm putting out on top of the access? And I think that's where it gets fun. Gets fun for Sidecar, gets fun from like a structuring perspective of, okay, what are the levers? What are like
Hmm.
the cool bells and whistles that I can put together? And that's where you get into things like structuring economics a certain way, putting incentives in place for engagement, right? What happens if, right, somebody shares a deal with you and you run the deal,
Hmm.
right? What happens if they bring another investor into the deal and that investor invests in their first syndicate? We're building product to kind of facilitate these things, sharing deals amongst other syndicate leads. What does co-syndication look like? Colin, you launched a fund, right? What does it mean to have like a
Yeah.
fund syndicate hybrid? And what is that now from a product perspective for these people that maybe want to pick deal by deal, maybe want to just have you kind of manage their portfolio? What are the incentives that you can put in there? So what we're seeing a lot of are these really cool structuring strategies or productization of syndicate builds and how that connects with the communities that you're building, right? What kind of engagement can you create alongside writing the check? And what does that mean for right? Total dollars deployed, if that's like the metric that you're kind of looking at, or number of deals done. And I mean, you guys are doing a lot of it. So I could flip this and get a lot of perspective from you, but we get the chance, like you said, to see some of the innovation on that front, how people are leveraging not just the sidecar product, but building a stack around it. And I think those things, along with the first part, which is, something to figure out for yourself, really can separate you from the rest. You can find that right niche and really get into a groove of doing what you're trying to do.
Nice. I have really enjoyed the fund product, and I've also learned that doing syndications alongside the fund investment is a lot of work now. But in the same spirit of it, I think Harry has a very similar model where like he essentially puts the check in and then he has LP money on top of that. And for me, it's like, wow, I can actually anchor my own SPVs in a big way, and then it kind of de-risks it for everyone else coming in, and you get larger allocations. There's just all these virtuous cycles that come from it. And when I was just doing SPVs by itself, I was always founder would ask you so how much can you do? And you're like, well, it's going to be somewhere between $0 and maybe $100,000, right? Or, whatever it may be. And now it's like, hey, look, this is happening. This is the amount you're getting. There'll be some other amount on top of it. Right. I don't know exactly what that'll be, but give me an allocation number and we'll try to hit it. And so for me, it's made early stage investing and doing syndications for early stage much easier. Whereas before it was very hard to do pre-seed round SPVs, because people are there's no lead investor, there's no name on this, there's very little traction. How do I even know this is good? Colin's just telling me it's good.
Yeah.
And so those were the ones that worked really well with involved in the SPV and adding people.
Yeah.
What do you got, Harry?
Well, one thing you said, Rob, that I liked is sort of productizing a lot of this. I don't know if you would call it fund strategies, but literally everything you listed off, right? Hey, if someone brings you the deal, you maybe, cut their carry, or, I sent a deal to a big tech alumni syndicate, and then I didn't even realize, and they ended up giving, I wrote the deal memo and they ended up giving me carry. I was like, oh, that was kind of a good idea. Maybe that's something I should do. You know what I mean? There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I think there's almost a piece. There's hey, that's one of the reasons why we like the podcast, because we talk about it. We can kind of educate people on the different strategies. But I like the way you put it, incentives that people are, kind of doing. And some of these are maybe more in a gray area, or maybe even technically illegal. So I think that's one of the reasons why people maybe don't talk about it so much. And so I love the idea of you kind of productizing. Is there anything that you guys have productized, or maybe that you have, see as an opportunity to productize, sort of scouting a deal, for example? That's kind of a more obvious one, but that to me is something that's kind of more obvious, I guess I'd say.
Yeah, that's good. I think from the sidecar perspective directly, you have a couple things that you can move. You can move the economics, right? So you can change carry, you can change management fee, you can share carry on a deal, and like you said, Harry, which I appreciate you calling it out. A lot of this stuff, you have to be really aware of the regulatory environment to really push and be creative and innovate. So, right, that's the balance to strike, and we'll be the first to, I don't want to get in trouble here.
Well, I'll be the one to get in trouble. Someone told me that, hey, you can't offer, you can't offer up, right? If someone sends you an LP, right? You can't solicit their LPs and then give them carry if they bring you the LP, right? That's somewhat what someone told me. I'm like, all right, there's certain areas that you have to be a little careful of. And I'm sure that, we'll put a nice disclaimer that nothing is legal advice.
Please put all the disclaimers, and I'll say, defer to your counsel on it.
But I mean, that's what's tricky, right? Because everyone's trying to figure it out, and then, but strategies that people are doing, right? They're a little scared to maybe talk about it because they don't want to get in trouble, or there's legal. So that's the whole point of our podcast. It's we're trying to figure these things out, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that's, I think, the problem with this idea of reducing the barriers to democratization. There's still inside baseball, and there's still this insider game of, where do I feel comfortable talking about this stuff on the levels that can really open up the tactics, and sharing carry for somebody who's doing something, right? You can share carry at a deal level,
Yeah.
not on a per investor level. That carry share should technically not be applied to them bringing in money into the deal, right? But if it's not explicit and you develop a relationship with them and they're helping you in some generic way executing the SPV, and part of that is going out and fundraising and developing relationships with the prospective investors, then you can share that carry, and you can then back into some of this stuff, reverse engineer it. So okay, if you can't give them carry for the 5 investors that they brought in, well, what percentage of the total deal would that represent in capital, right? If those 5 investors were 25% of the deal, then what's the right amount of carry to give them on the deal? And I think that's where you spend some time thinking about it. You hopefully can start to develop relationships with other people doing it, right? In communities where you can feel comfortable engaging and talking, right? What's the follow-up, right? Maybe that they can email you guys after the podcast episode, and you can have some back and forth, right? In a way that maybe gets into the weed a little bit, or whatever kind of channels that you guys are establishing. And I think that's really the importance of building these communities and building them in a way that facilitates some of these dialogues. So we can put it out there high level, and then hopefully people can run with it and get it to the finish line in a way that they feel comfortable with moving on. And so I think, right, carry sharing, how are you even just managing the connection between Sydecar as a deal execution platform and then whatever community syndicate building that you're on right now? So something that we've been working on for a while now is this syndicates product that'll sit on top of our deal execution, our core SPV product. And that stuff, right, is how to leverage data, how to leverage, right, investor preferences. And some of this stuff people are building, right? People have done a good job of building their own websites, building Airtables type setups, and really trying to get smart about what the community management piece of it is to hopefully increase the conversion from someone following your podcast or your newsletter or whatever to writing checks into some of your deals. And I think that's a lot of the feature build that we're on, is trying to integrate with some of those processes. You talked, Colin, about like how to manage the allocation from both sides and how to be better at that. We're trying to build product on the soft commits. Can you get an indication of interest when you first go shop the deal, right? And then sort of put a discount on that number, try to back into it. So earlier on in the process, you can talk to the founder before it's just, hey, how much money do we have in the SPV bank account? All right, that's the amount in the purchase agreement, and you guys write that in. And so it's really trying to get, we've got to a pretty good place. I think it's fair to say, being really solid with the transaction, right? Making that pretty efficient. But now it's that operating system on top that we're looking at. And I think the other part of it is, how does that connect with the ecosystem more broadly? So something that I would call out that we're also very excited about is this capital partnership program. The first one that we launched was the capital extension program with MDSV, who's a partner of ours. They're specifically focused on providing capital to syndicate leads for follow-on rounds or deals where you can't fill the allocation that you get in. And so, right, if you think about syndicate leads, emerging managers, they're finding deals. Oftentimes they're finding, right, the best deals, the deals that other people are trying to access, but they have a hard time building up or they're in the process of building up the capital networks to actually deploy where there might be demand. So we're trying to connect the dots. This is where I'll say we've fundamentally planted our flag as a company, not building out a marketplace like AngelList.
Got it.
Right. And the way we've thought about it is, your LP relationships are sacred to you as a manager. And so we want to build product that supports that vision, that idea that you're building your brand. We are the back end to support it. And as you build that brand and as you build those relationships, that's really critical to your business. And so how do we then support you in getting access to capital, developing, right, your capital pipeline? And this is where this program is something that we're really excited about, is connecting our infrastructure, the product that you're building on with Sydecar, your brand, to potentially other capital sources, not from Colin's syndicate to Harry's syndicate, but from these other outside capital sources that are looking to get into these deals. And then then it just becomes a matter of economics of, being able to share carry between these groups. So we flipped the switch on that, and that's something that we're going to continue to invest in, which I think will be a really important complement to your stack, right? And you building your brand and you leveraging the product there is to now actually support you in getting more capital into your deals.
Yeah, I like the way you put it, and kind of what Sidecar stands out, and it's really in kind of owning that LP. It's hard to get LPs, right? So it's like you don't want maybe don't want to, share them. You want to have that relationship, right? And so I think kind of like building your brand, this is really, kind of like the core ethos, it sounds like, of Sidecar. So, I think the last topic that I wanted to broadly ask you about, Rob, was the syndicate leads and the emerging managers who are having a lot of success on Sidecar. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing differently? Or what's something that stood out that you've seen kind of across the board from the, folks in your network that are having a lot of success?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways to do it. One is, I mean, frankly, a big trend that we're seeing is just in some of these secondaries deals, like later stage deals, which is just like, right, finding product that sells itself.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can get into a brand name deal, then you can leverage that to, right, get capital, start to build
Yeah.
your business. We're seeing more of that. We're seeing more new, unique LP sources. So as an example, offshore capital coming into the US, again, it's sort of derivative of the same sort of brand name product, which could be for someone here, SpaceX or
Yeah.
Anthropic or whatever.
That's funny. I was
But for
just
someone
thinking SpaceX, right? Like, hey, get them into a big
yeah,
SpaceX secondary. Now they're in your network. Now they're your LP. Then you got to send them, the weird pre-seed early stage startup, and maybe they trust you or, have that relationship, right? It's a lot safer, route for them.
yeah, right. Because if you're introducing people to angel investing or to venture, there's a big education curve that we're all on, right? That goes beyond yourself as a manager or a syndicate lead or whatever, of like, hey, I'm a good investor, I'm seeing good deals. And that's where a lot of this content that we're trying to put out, I think, can be helpful. Is what we've realized is it's not just about us helping and you guys helping educate these listeners. It's how do we empower you to have a playbook and a toolkit to go educate these prospective investors on coming into this stuff, and can we give you decks that you can rebrand your own and share those with these people to understand the asset class. And so I think an entry point is you're selling the deal. The good thing about deal by deal syndication, one of the pros is that you can sell the deal. And I think if you think about that, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I think it also can lead to syndicate leads just trying to find deals that they know they can sell.
Yeah.
Versus deals that they really believe in that are going to perform, right? And so I think you really want to be thoughtful about that. But it can be a tool to understand what deals are going to be more accessible, right? More easily understood from especially investors that you're going to do your first deal with or first few deals with. And if it's not late stage pre-IPO SpaceX, then what is it? What is it that becomes more accessible? Is there another component to it that's not returns based that you can lean in on, right? Where we see a lot of success is with communities that really lean into not just the types of investors that they're bringing together or the type of content that they're putting out, but also the types of deals that they're investing in. And right, you could do that just as a sector. Oh, you like consumer, you like marketplaces, which is cool, and you can establish a niche there. You can also take that a step further and right, look at affinity, look at social impact, look at some of these other elements to how somebody might underwrite, so to speak, an investment opportunity, or understand what is the motivation for them holistically on top of the return profile that they're trying to see. And again, those just provide more easy access points for somebody coming in. Is, we're investing in women founders. We're creating this investor network of women supporting women, or anyone supporting women founders. As an example, we've seen those to be really effective and sort of not dependent on the track record build and some of the other things that go into the longer term play as you think about firm building with an eye to the future.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Rob. And, we mentioned Sydecar a couple times now, but we do have a landing page for our Wannabe Angel listeners, sidecar.io/Wannabe Angels, which we will direct people to. And it was really cool to hear about your personal experience and kind of why you joined Sydecar and all of the insider knowledge. Anything else, Colin, before we let Rob go?
No, I just say thanks for building a great product. It's been a big part of my journey, so I'm really grateful that you guys keep iterating on it. I'm excited to see the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Anything else you want to
Yeah,
mention?
thanks for. No, I just want to say, I mean, to flip this, you guys are so representative of who we're trying to build for. And I guess on a personal level, where my focus and passion has lied for the last several years. And so I really appreciate everything that you're doing. And this podcast is a big part of that, reflective of what you're doing, both in building your businesses as well as what you're bringing to this community and the ecosystem more broadly. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that,
Thank
Rob.
you.
It's a fun journey, and I think we've signed up for about 7 to 10 years of this, so we'll keep doing it. All right. See you, Rob.
All right, guys.